viewers, as the Indian cricket team celebrated beating the Aussies in the ODI series and having an overall successful tour down under, two young stars couldn't be there. And we don't know when will Hardik Pandya and Rahul get back to playing cricket for India. They are currently suspended after their coffee chat recently. We don't know if they are suspended because Pandya was bragging about his playboyish lifestyle or because they gave the interview without BCCI's permission or because of BCCI's internal politics. We don't really know what the main reason is. But this is how things currently stand, viewers. Rahul and Hardik Pandya have been suspended indefinitely. The two CoA members, Vinod Rai and Diana Adalji, are fighting. They can't decide what to do with these two cricketers. So they decided to go to the Supreme Court for help. The Supreme Court then heard their case and said, well, let's appoint an amicus curiae who will look into this case. They appointed one who said, no, I am not going to look into this case. Then they have now sought to appoint another one. This amicus curiae will now decide on what future course of action has to be. Supreme Court will then hear the case again and then so on and so forth. Meanwhile, BCCI and Committee of Administrators are also internally contemplating if they should bring an ombudsman in who will mediate in this case and decide what the punishment should be for Rahul and Hardik Pandya for their comments on a chat gossipy show. Now, why is all of this happening? Is it really because BCCI and the Committee of Administrators genuinely believe that Pandya boasting about his skills to get dates is worthy of all their time and energy? Or is it because of internal conflicts, internal rivalries and power games? Because let's also be realistic tonight, viewers. Vinod Rai and Diana Adalji cannot agree on a single thing. That's how it has been within the Committee of Administrators for a while now. Be it action on sexual harassment allegations against the BCCI CEO Rahul Johri or action on this chatty business. These two are fighting like Kilkenny cats to quote the Supreme Court from another matter. And while I am no one to decide what the punishment should be for these two cricketers or if there should be any punishment at all by the BCCI, I am wondering tonight, is politics within the BCCI or Committee of Administrators harming cricket in our country now? Let's straight away get to the debate and say good evening to our panelists. Alan Sippy, former cricketer, joins us this evening. Meghna Pant is an author. Good to have her on our panel this evening. Mr. V. Srivatsa, senior sports journalist, is also with us. Kriti Chaturvedi, radio jockey. And Shishir Hitangri, former cricketer, with us. But first, I'm going to go across to our consulting editor, Vinay Tiwari, for his comments. Vinay, I am wondering if this is because Vinod Rai and Diana Adalji genuinely believe that those comments are worthy of more than 2 match, 4 match, 5 match suspension, or is it because there is something going on within their own group and within the BCCI?
See, Tanvi, the formation of the CoA was the outcome of a committee of Justice Lodha, which was actually meant to clean up Indian cricket and to fix or set the house in order. Unfortunately, now we've become a laughingstock for the world on not just this issue, but a lot of issues. And that has actually made situations much worse than what it was. And I don't want to miss any words on it, but unfortunately, cricket today is now much worse in terms of administration than it was perhaps when it was being governed by all kinds of other people. Having said that, there is no question about it that nowadays with gender sensitivities issues being extremely important and relevant, it is important for the players to conduct themselves publicly in a proper manner, know what to say, know what not to say. There is no question, there is no denying that fact. But I'm afraid what has happened in the last 15 days or 20 days over the way they've handled the Hardik Pandya episode tells you how out of touch they are on how stardom, cricket and everything else works. They are out of, and I'm saying out of touch with modern day sport because Diana Adalji is a legend of the game and I have every respect for the skill that she had when she was a cricketer on the field. But I'm afraid she's a little unrealistic about what's really the problem with cricket and stardom that comes along with it, especially in the age of IPL and big money. If there is no need, there is no doubt about that the cricketers perhaps need to be trained, taught, and explained gender sensitivity and what to say, because they're role models for millions of people. Please understand, these are young cricketers who at the age of 17 and 18 start living a very cocoon life. Shishir has played cricket at a very high level and he'll bear me out on that. Alan has played cricket as well. They lead a cocoon life. They have no clue. This is what they talk in private. They have made a big mistake by actually going out and saying in public what they talk about in private all the time. It's a gossip show. It's a show that perhaps has no more respect than that of a gossip show, which has now been converted into the biggest crisis that is facing in cricket, to the extent that we are not even sure, or the captain and the coach is not even sure, who's going to be there in the squad for the World Cup, which is perhaps the biggest thing that you can have for a cricketer. So unfortunately, the whole concept of a CoA, which was meant to clean up cricket, has just ended up making it worse than we. And that, for me, is the biggest problem in the current crisis.
Right, Vinay, thank you so much for setting the pace for this debate. Shishir, do you agree with what Vinay Tiwari is saying? What's your own sense of where we've reached now and how we've reached here?
Well, I'll just start off by saying that, Vinay has a point, and that's a very valid point. I mean, he's made some valid points. But the fact of the matter is, let's not miss the forest for the trees here. When the CoA was formed, because they had to execute the Lodha Commission views on the BCCI, it was imperative that, the general body of the BCCI did appoint an ombudsman for every time there was an issue like this. It's a part of the new constitution that was created in August. That hasn't been used even in the Me Too case, in the sexual harassment case. They went to a three-person probe committee, which was again not required. You needed an ombudsman to look into the matter. Now, in this case again, they've gone looking for the ombudsman, which is the right way to do it. But one wrong in the sexual harassment case doesn't justify what you're doing now. And it's actually a headless body now, where nobody is looking eye to eye. And having said that, Indian cricket is on a high in terms of performances. But look at what's happening in the back doors in the corridors of power. There is no power. You're asking a CoA the CEO to look into something that he has been entangled with in the last 3 months about sexual harassment, and he's going to do the initial probe. Then you have you're going looking for an ombudsman, which is something you should have done even in the sexual harassment case. You didn't do that, and now you're going to the Supreme Court saying that please appoint an ombudsman for a Hardik Pandya and a Rahul issue, which actually would have been sorted by the members of the BCCI had they been in power. And having said that, look at where we are today. We don't know whether we're running in circles, we're running in a straight line, or we're just waiting for things to happen. Nothing has happened. The Lodha Commission demands haven't been fulfilled yet. The general body meetings haven't been announced. So what you're talking about is complete mayhem in the corridors of power of the richest board.
Yes, in fact, Justice Lodha himself has been quoted by various media organizations in saying that he is disappointed and he is unhappy with the way the CoA has handled few other issues, not necessarily this issue, and how they have gone about implementing what he would have ideally wanted them to do. I didn't want this to be purely a conversation with the cricket experts and those who are experts on BCCI. I wanted this also to be a larger debate because, let's face it, these two guys are celebrities. They are in public life, and most of us watch that show. Most of us have opinions about that show. And so I thought we should bring in people from other spheres as well. So let me bring in Meghna Pant. And Meghna, I think most people will agree what Hardik Pandya said that night, and maybe KL Rahul's silence or the way he was egging him on was cringeworthy. Some may say misogynistic or sexist. But do you think the BCCI's reaction and their suspension, their absence from the Australia series, New Zealand series, we don't know, them giving up their money, IPL money, all of that is called for?
I think it absolutely is. We live in a culture of impunity, and we live in a very dichotomous world where on one hand, we live in the Me Too era where into the male psyche, we are slowly seeing gender sensitization seep in, and it has led to conversation changers, water cooler conversation changers, but we also live in a world where the most powerful man in the world, people like Donald Trump, who think that locker room conversation is okay to be privy to the public eye, he's the most misogynistic man, yet he holds the most powerful office in the world. So we live in a very dichotomous world as we stand today. But I don't care about the politics of cricket or even the politics of religion, like I've spoken about in Sabrimala. My only issue is that are we doing right by women? Can we afford to normalize this locker room conversation? And I think it's okay to say such things and objectify women in the public platform. And if we continue with this culture of impunity, we've seen this with superstars, when we make superstars of people like Salman Khan who beat up their girlfriends, or politicians like Abu Azmi who say women are like sugar to ants. We're seeing they're constantly condoning their actions. We're looking past that because we're so in awe of men who are powerful and rich and famous. This culture of impunity has to stop, and role models like Hardik Pandya and Rahul have to be held up, and retribution has to be sought so that this does not normalize the misogynistic psyche of our country.
Sukriti was with me on the first day when we had this debate, when the entire outrage was happening, and we both agreed that those comments should not have been made. They were cringeworthy, they were offensive. Sukriti, what do you think should be their punishment? They've already been suspended. They've missed history being created in Australia with the team winning there. They're not going to be part of the New Zealand tour. Now some within the BCCI want Hardik Pandya's IPL fee to be taken and to be used for under-19 women cricket development. Do you think that's a good idea? Where do we take this punishment?
So I completely agree with what Meghna said earlier about how this misogyny culture should not be normalized, and just because they are at that position and they're making those comments and we said, acha theek hai, let them go because they are at that position. I agreed to that. But talking about punishment, Tanvi, I personally feel that there's no need to drag the Supreme Court here. There is no point, because what more probe, what investigation is supposed to be done. Whatever they said was out there in the open and everybody knows. Of course they made a fault, they made a grave mistake, and these things should not be normalized. They should totally be punished. But I also feel that both of them are at the peak of their career, and at the peak of their career, any career, if you tell them you can't do this, you can't play cricket, you are a cricketer but you can't play that sport, I think that is a good enough punishment. Now to just keep dragging that on, I'm not quite in favor of that, to just keep dragging it on and some internal politics like you guys were talking about. Of course, I don't think that should be the right thing. At the same time, I also feel that yes, whatever they have done is totally wrong and they should be punished. But I feel that they've already got their punishment and they've already realized they've been they are not allowed to play for the 2 matches. They've been thrown out of the New Zealand series as well. So I think the punishment they have realized their mistake. That's what I feel.
Okay, let me go across to Mr. Srivatsa and ask him where he stands on this conversation tonight. Mr. Srivatsa?
This is an issue which should have been solved by now. There was no need for so much of this thing going to Supreme Court and so many people talking in different ways in cricket board itself. See, the best way is they should have asked formed a 3-member senior cricketers committee, somebody like Tendulkar, Rahul Dravid, whoever it is, and they could have asked them to talk to the 2 boys and then finished it off. Instead of dragging it, going to the court. Now the court says let the new judge, new lawyer be appointed. Then we will see what happens. And in the meanwhile, the 34 affiliated board associations have not complied with the new constitution. And what is the thing they are talking? And it was decided in August. Look at this. Already we are into the 2019 and they have not done anything. Despite all that, see, the best thing, I think Mr. Vinod Rai doesn't seem to know much of cricket, and Diana Adilji doesn't seem to know about administration. And between the two, they have messed it up royally. And there's no need for this. You see, Vinod Rai said 2-match suspension and be done with it. If he had said that as, first of all, why should it come to CoA? It should have been done at the board. Unfortunately, you have an acting president, you have an acting secretary, you have an acting treasurer. They are only acting. They are doing nothing. Because of that, this has been dragged on. And in view of this, now what will happen? what will happen to the they won't have much to play. These two cricketers will not get to play many matches before the World Cup. How will they be selected in the World Cup team?
Yes.
That is the point you have to discuss, because all other things is okay. Much has been said by all the other panelists, and they're all right. They all have a point to make. But ultimately, nothing is moving on the ground.
Yes.
People should realize that cricketers cannot be, okay, they have made a mistake, they have made silly things, fair enough. And you can take action. If 2 members cannot take action, you think 10 members will come to this thing and come to an agreement?
Yes. Well, this is not the first time that Diana Adalji and Vinod Rai have locked horns. Diana Adalji wanted strict action against Rahul Johri when sexual harassment allegations were made against him. Vinod Rai said, the committee that was appointed didn't find anything, so that's fine. Within 10 days, that matter, by the way, was sorted and settled in 10 days. And Rahul Johri continues to be the CEO of BCCI. And since then, there have been many other instances where these two have constantly fought. That's not it. It gets worse because the rest of the BCCI officials are also against these two. So you have Amitabh Chaudhary, who's a BCCI secretary, who says, no, BCCI official gave permission to Hardik and KL Rahul to go on this show. It has to be one of the CoA members. Why have they not been suspended till now? What are we waiting for? And then he goes on to attack Rahul Johri to say it's ridiculous that a tainted man is writing to Hardik asking for explanations. So Alan Sippy, I think the question that I'm trying to get to is that we could have just done this with deciding if there has to be any punishment within the first 2 days. But where we have reached right now has nothing to do with anybody getting offended with what Hardik Pandya said, but more so because they're playing their own games now.
Tanvi, I agree with you completely. You see, after all these days, everyone seems to be in unison with what, there's no point in defending the cricketers because they need to be punished, and I think they've already been punished. They've been brought back into the country. They've missed a few games. They were talking about 2-match suspension. They've already lost out quite a bit. Today, we're actually sitting and debating about the CoA and the BCCI. I think there's a complete discord between the two. You see, sometimes that when people get to power, some kind of seat that they hold, it happens to every human being sometimes. You know, when you hold a seat of power, you get carried away by this. It looks to me from afar that the CoA and the BCCI have a massive ego problem. They have absolute discord between each other. They don't seem to get along. They have no kind of understanding between each other. And they just dilly-dallying on this whole episode, which could have been handled much better. It's been almost 10 plus days. The boys, they've suffered enough. The country, the public want them to, now they've been chastised, they've been punished. The public want to move on with this. But the CEO and the BCCI, they still have absolutely no clarity as to what they want to do. I'm not going down the legal angle because I don't know much on the legal angle. But as far as the human aspect is concerned, they cannot drag this for so long and punish the boys on and on because this is absurd. There's absolutely, in my mind, no discord, there's no connect, and there's a massive ego gap between the BCCI, the CoA, and whoever's involved in the hierarchy.
Meghna Pant, let me bring that back to you because there are panelists on this show tonight who feel that they've already suffered, they've already been punished, and now we're going way too far. Your response to that?
There is a school of thought that we're making a mountain out of a molehill, that there's too much hullabaloo around it and the boys have been punished enough. But I don't think we should think that way. I don't think that at the state we are in our nation, this is a healthy way of thinking. Let's remember, I was talking about the culture of impunity that's granted to powerful and famous men. Let's remember what came of the Me Too movement. We saw men who were accused like Chetan Bhagat, their books came out, they weren't stopped, their careers weren't stalled. People like Sohail Seth got married. Everyone has moved on with their life. There's been no sort of condemnation. There's been no backlash really to them except to their reputation. On the other hand, women who are in power, are always condemned. It started from the time of Indira Gandhi being called a witch, to Maneka Gandhi's photos being paraded in a towel to shame her, from Vasundhara Raje's photos being morphed into Kiran Mazumdar Shaw's photographs, to Jayalalitha's sari being torn off. We've always seen that women in power are always brought down. They are held responsible for every word that comes out of their mouth. So this is a gap that needs to be bridged. And in any revolution, there are bodies. If people think that these two guys are being made scapegoats, maybe it's about time that our nation needs to make men scapegoats, because that is the need of the hour. We need to bridge this gender inequality that has existed for too long in our country. And perhaps these are the guys who will show us that men cannot get away with misogynistic statements. They cannot objectify women. It is not okay to talk like that about women.
But there is no sexual harassment allegation here. This is not really Me Too. This is simply one person talking about his lifestyle, which
no,
may be misogynistic or offensive.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm talking about normalizing. Right. No, I'm talking about the pervasive sexism that exists across industries, across the board, across castes, across cultures, that needs to now be reprimanded. We can't keep condoning the action and saying poor bachas and boys will be boys. This kind of chatter has to stop, because I think it will only make us more aggressive as a nation. And if we are to go forward, you know, the way his parents were talking, the way a lot of people supported him, I read articles that were supporting him that were blaming his statements on his small town or his lack of higher education. But we can't keep condoning these kind of statements. Sexism and misogyny cannot be normalized. And if we don't punish these guys today, there will be more role models who come out in the future and talk like this and then get away with it because of our culture of impunity.
Shishir Haratangadi, would you want to come in at this point and respond? Because Meghna Pant is saying that sometimes you do need scapegoats to set an example. Okay, Alan Sippy, I'll come to you next, but let me just ask Shishir as well, because you do need scapegoats to set an example, to make a point. Maybe these are the easiest scapegoats, because the other stars who come on that show are way beyond, are probably too big to be touched right now.
So I'll just make a quick point here. You know, we're trying to, there's a dichotomy in the way we've handled two issues. One is, of course, the Rahul Johri, the sexual harassment case, and the way we're handling the cricketers case. That case was very clearly a 3-person probe committee decided he won 2-1. So when you're giving a character certificate to somebody and you win a game 2-1, it's not exactly, it's only 66 point whatever percent that decides that you're okay. 33.13% says you're not okay. So, you know, that was fast-tracked. This matter hasn't been fast-tracked. Yes, I have a problem. I've publicly come out with the fact that I was not impressed, and in fact, I found that interview nauseating. But that's a personal thing. That's my personal observation. I have no sympathy for both these cricketers who came out in public. But it is time somebody in the corridor of power sits there and takes the decision as to where their cricket is going in future. Nobody seems to be concerned with where their cricket is going. I mean, you've called them back, but, you know, your probe committee or your ombudsman or whoever has, your ombudsman who has to decide, according to the law now, that he's going to decide or he's going to give his report after inquiry on the punishment to be meted out or the penalty to be meted out to these players. That hasn't been fast-tracked. You fast-track a sexual harassment case, but you don't fast-track something on cricketers whose value to the cricket team and Indian cricket is probably much more than a CEO's. And that is, to me, more worrying than anything. Yes, they have done something wrong. They need to be penalized, but get on with it. I mean, it's high time we move forward, take decisions and say, okay, this is where we are penalizing you. This is what we are going to keep a watch on you for in future.
Yes.
You are representing our country with that logo on your shirt. So that's why you're answerable to the people of India. You're not some film star who can say what he wants and go and, you know, project something on screen and then say you're a good man. No, it doesn't work like that for a sportsman. But then take decisions. You're not taking decisions, and that is where I think there is a complete antithesis in the way you handle these two issues, and that to me is shameful for a board that is actually doing well right on that cricket field, defeating Australia in all in the test matches and the one days. But when it comes to your own backyard and your own corridors of power, you're just struggling to take decisions. And to me, that is more embarrassing than, anything else in the world. Cricketers haven't been looked at as a priority, even in a penalization or in a case where these two gentlemen have erred, and they've erred very badly. But at least respect them for being cricketers and take decisions on their future. That's all I have to say.
Take decisions on their future, yes. Take decisions on their future, and that's where they've dragged their feet. They've come up with the most complicated and most a process which will take the longest, and it just gets longer and longer. And we don't even know how long it's going to take, because even if you look at the entire process of setting up, appointing an ombudsman, and then the ombudsman looking into it and coming up with a report and recommendations and all of that process, they could take at least 6 months. That's the timeline that's been defined. 6 months. Just take a decision now. You know what they have said. The whole world has heard it. We've been told. Vinod Rai on day one took out time to sit down and watch the chat show to take a call on what punishment has to be done. There were emails that went back and forth. Should it be a 2-match suspension? Should it be more? There was a public apology, another public apology. And since then, it's been now weeks where they've not managed to decide. Alan Sippy wanted to come in. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I like to actually, I feel sympathy for Meghna, because what she was trying to say that, the cricketers were wrong. We don't deny that. We're not defending, we're not here to defend them. In fact, they've already been punished. What we're trying to say that today's debate really is actually about the BCCI. It's not about the cricketers. They've been punished, they've done everything. But the BCCI, the debate is about the BCCI and why is there a delay. I really think that it's about time. I mean, if they're listening to the show or what's going on, the BCCI, the CoA, they have to take a decision and take a decision quickly, because this is just absurd. But not taking a decision, as Shashi rightly said, that is the country, the Indian team is doing so well. They've beaten Australia after so many years. But back home in India, we're struggling to take a decision as to what the punishment is about the cricketers. It's time that these guys, sit up and take notice and do something about this, because this cannot drag on. We don't want to be sitting here and talking about the BCCI and their lack of decision making in the next show, because this is absurd.
Well, and the benchmarks are also different. While yes, there should be repercussions for your actions, for your comments, and in today's post-Me Too era, you have to be a lot more careful about what you say and how you behave. But politicians are not held to those benchmarks. Superstars from the film world are not held to that benchmark. Vinay Tiwari, are these two being held to that benchmark because they're easy to be made scapegoats?
So Tanvi, I think there are 3 big problems that we have with this debate, which is happening across the country right now. Problem number 1 is this. Nobody on this panel, and I think anywhere else, has actually defended that something wrong has happened. Nobody has done that. The principle of natural justice says that even if a crime has been committed, you need to deliver justice, and you need to deliver justice swiftly and in proportion to what the crime actually has happened. I am no one to judge what should be the proportion of this. If it is I am perfectly fine if a committee of judges comes and says you need to give them capital punishment for it. I am no one to judge on that. The question is, you need to deliver that quickly. You cannot let justice happen on the basis of perceptions. You cannot let justice happen on the basis of a feeling of revenge, or you cannot have justice on the basis of trying to get even. That's not how the concept of justice works anywhere. Fix the accountability, fix the punishment, and deliver it quickly. The trouble in this case is, some people are reacting to this particular event from a point of view of envy. Some of them are doing it from the point of view of revenge. The others want some starry cricketers to get fixed. That's not how you go about delivering justice in any crime. Even Kasab, when he was not being hanged for years, people were saying, get on with it, get it done. My point is, this whole business of not being able to decide what should be the process to fix a judgment itself is an absurd situation. You cannot fix punishment for any crime, let alone comments made on a gossip, trashy show. This is not the way to do it. And this way is making our cricket and our cricketing establishment, as I said at the start, a laughing stock in the world. On a day when your team has done remarkably well down under, you have a situation where, and remember, the ICC is being ruled by 2 Indians currently. You have Shashank Manohar and now you have an Indian ruling ICC. But in your own backyard, you can't find 2 people who can run your own cricket properly.
Yes.
I mean, to me, the Supreme Court should actually step in and remove both these people. And Mr. Srivatsa got it bang on right. You have one person who doesn't know cricket and the other who has no clue of administration. And it's a royal cocktail, which is a disaster.
Yes, and in fact, if they did focus on the administration part, perhaps they should have held sensitization classes for these cricketers a long time ago. You know, that's what they should have done. They should have told them how to behave, how to give these interviews. I mean, if you're getting carried away with all the fame and the money and the parties and the access to everything, there should have been training sessions for this, rather than now sitting back and saying, oh, wait, now what should we do? Oh, let's first appoint an ombudsman, then ask him, but listen, we can't agree with what to do. So let's go to the Supreme Court and ask the Supreme Court to help us out here, because we can't agree what to do in this scenario. And Mr. Srivatsa, many are also saying tonight that KL Rahul must be wondering, what did I do? Why am I suspended? And of all of these series, I barely uttered a word.
Absolutely. See, I'll tell you a classic case. When Mahendra Amarnath called selectors a bunch of jokers, the board sent the gentleman cricketer administrator, Mr. Ghulam Ahmad, to inquire. He came all the way to Delhi. He had a very nice this thing with Mahendra. And what the board, what action board took is a different thing. But the fact is, he came and he explained to him, Mahendra, what you did is not correct. It's wrong. And the same thing, I'll tell you, years ago, Bishan Bedi got into a trouble. And that time also board sent one Mr. Bharatchand Khanna, who used to be an IAS officer who played good grade of cricket. He came and inquired into the thing and submitted a report. I said, board has very good people to do these things. Why should board run to Supreme Court or CoA? And you know, it's a joke. Jayana Ajulji went with her own personal lawyer to Supreme Court. Can you beat that? I mean, this is something. Rai said that 2 matches, okay, they have lost 3 matches now. Not 2 match suspension, 3 matches are over. Now if they don't go to New Zealand, how will they be selected for the World Cup? See, if you don't know how to, see, if you had left it to the board, I think the good old board would have sorted it out much better than this arrangement by the Supreme Court. Supreme Court doesn't have time, as if it has plenty of time to go into all these things. So is it their job to look into this kind of cricket discipline and all? Right. I mean, what is the point in having a 34-unit cricket board which can't even take a decision on 2 players, how to discipline them? Yes, they should be disciplined. There are no 2 opinions about it. But how long will you drag it? How long will you take it to discipline them?
Yes.
I mean, it is something silly. I mean, they're sitting at one chap, poor chap can't even go out of his house, I believe. Hardik Pandya. He's sitting at home. Isn't it good enough insult?
Yes, I mean, yes. Well, he's
something that has to be done in a systematic way. And it's already 1 week. 1 week from 14th and now it is 20th, tomorrow, today is 19th. So what are they doing for 1 week?
Well, exchanging emails back and forth, Mr. Srivatsa.
Australia to India, they have not done anything.
Exchanging emails back and forth, contemplating what the punishment should be.
No, they have explained. You have given. You have.
Yes.
No, I just wanted to add, when you mentioned exchanging emails,
notice they have replied.
They not only exchange emails.
Replies, how long will they take?
They not only exchange emails, those emails are promptly out in the media 5 minutes after they've been sent. It's happened in the Harmanpreet versus Mithali Raj episode. It happened when the battle started during the Kumble versus Kohli battle. Then it happened in the Mithali Raj battle. Then it happened in the Rahul Johri battle. And it's happening again for the 4th time now. The mails are CC'd and copied on BCC to God knows who, but it comes out in the media in 5 minutes. There is one other point I wanted to add, Tanvi, on the original point that I was making. Please understand, the principle of law or justice means judges in Supreme Court can't take decisions on the basis of how angry they feel about something. Because if anger was the basis of justice, a lot of people would perhaps get hanged to death way more than they, because a lot of things make us very angry. You need to form rules You need to insist the rules are followed, and those rules need to be followed consistently and fairly in every case. I think the problem with the current COA is they are showing up different rules for different folks.
Yes.
And that's where the big problem is. You need to follow the same code. And anger is not the solution to this problem. The problem is there. The BCCI should have actually come out with a policy where they should actually train young cricketers on gender sensitivity as well, because they end up being role models. I don't see anybody talking about that. You should have 18-year-old, 19-year-old young under 19 cricketers being taught public
that's
speaking,
exactly what we actually
taught gender sensitivity, taught how what they say actually makes a lot of difference to people outside in the normal world. They need to be told and taught all of this. I don't see BCCI talking about that at all at any stage.
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, that's what we raised on day one as well. Sukriti, yeah.
Exactly.
You know,
Yeah, I was just going to say that exactly. That's something that we pointed out in the very first day when you had
1 minute. Mr. Srivatsa, I'll just come to you in just a bit. Mr. Srivatsa, just 30 seconds, please. Let's Sukriti finish your point. I'm coming to you on it. Yes, Sukriti.
I'm just saying that, Tanvi, this is exactly what we discussed in the very beginning also, about how BCCI should maybe do these sensitizing courses, about tell cricketers as to how they have to go out in public and say what, which is not something that BCCI should ideally do. They're not supposed to do this, but now, seeing the current scenario, they might just start doing it. You're absolutely right. There's been no talk about that. The BCCI has not come out in the open and said, all right, we'll be more careful from now on. We'll be more careful about what our cricketers say or what the dressing room talks are going to be. So maybe that should be there. That should be talked about. Also, I'll just make a quick point about what Meghna was saying about misogyny and sexism becoming normal. Well, when this incident happened about Hardik Pandya and KL Rahul on Coffee with Karan, I actually went down on the streets and I talked to a lot of people about what they feel, because there was a lot of anger. So all that I came back with, the thought that I came back with was misogyny and sexism is not normal. A lot of guys also said that this is wrong. Whatever they said, we totally condemn it, and it is absolutely wrong. So to say that misogyny and sexism is normal, I think there's been a change. And if the BCCI, maybe all this episode was supposed to make a point or was supposed to set an example, I think somewhere the beginning has been made. So maybe the punishment can now be, we should talk about how maybe they should be led back into the team sooner than later, and then never, maybe 6 months, what you were talking about. So I think all that is, the anger is still there in the public, but they also feel that anger should be associated with a bit of maturity. Where is why are we dragging in Supreme Court suddenly in all these politics? So all that's my point here. Like gender sensitization and misogyny not being normal, I have realized this on this case when I went down and I talked to people.
Yes, and in fact, even if I look at the comments right now on Twitter, what people are writing to us, people who are calling us, and we're going to go to a couple of those callers as well, they all believe that these guys should face some kind of repercussion for what they have done. But Meghna, there is also a difference between saying you can't say this publicly because this kind of locker room talk is not acceptable. But how do you go from there to say this kind of talk is not acceptable at all? In your WhatsApp groups, in your locker rooms, or in public interviews, there is also that difference that many people right now, the lines are blurred there.
Yes, exactly.
The problem in our country is that the only people who are famous are netas, abhinetas and cricketers, and they're looked upon as role models for especially the youth, the young men and women. Now, if people like Hardik and Rahul speak like this, where again their comments reek of sexism and misogyny and objectifying women, what will happen? It will lead to other young men also thinking that this is very, very normal. And one of your panelists said that she spoke to a few people. I don't know what the sample size was. I'm very happy to hear that she thinks this is not normalized. But look at what the politicians in our country, the kind of statements that they come up with every day that are anti-women. Look at the kind of statements that our actors come out with that are anti-women. Look at the films that are being made. Look at the television serials that are being made. Of course, it's been normalized. Of course, sexism and misogyny has been normalized. And I'm glad action is being taken. My one point was, and please pardon my ignorance on this matter, I'm wondering, as you all are debating about this, whether the BCCI has a POSH committee. Do they have an internal complaints committee? Are they conducting gender sensitization courses for the cricketers cricketers and for the employees? And are they following Vishaka guidelines? So I don't know if anybody on the panel can answer this. I'm just asking this out of curiosity. Are all the guidelines, because across companies after the Me Too movement, we've seen a huge shift that HR across companies are taking a lot of legitimate action where they are sensitizing their employees. So I'm asking, is the Cricket Association doing the same, and is it effective enough?
I'm not too sure if there is a posh committee, because in
No,
Rahul Johri's
once
case
again,
they
I want to
appointed
answer
a
to that.
separate.
Once again,
yes, Vinay.
Tanvi, hang on. I think we're just again confusing the whole issue. BCCI is an organization. They have employees, and there is a posh for their employees.
Yes.
That exists, but that's not extended to the cricketers, because cricketers are technically under contract as players. That's a different story altogether.
Okay.
Right? So so yes, Rahul Johri was or should have been under that posh committee, which is what happened, and Shishir was a part of that, and he will bear us out on that. But the cricketer contract is very different. They're like not employees in that sense, right? So
right.
that's different. So, but I think that's not the issue here at all. The issue is very different. Look. The thing that nobody is talking about is this particular show was a recorded show. It wasn't a live show. It passed 3 filters on another platform. There's a producer for that show. There must have been somebody who oversaw that show. The sensitivity filter has failed at the broadcast level as well. If it was such a bad show, why was it? It was put on air. It was only pulled down later.
Yes.
Only after there was public outrage on social media was the show pulled down. The point I'm trying to make is this. This particular situation passed multiple filters and nobody's questioning Star, right? Because they did put up that show, and then they had to back out and withdraw under public pressure. It has a filtering process. There are people in channels, because we all are in the same industry, we know, who look for these things before a show is put out on air, but it wasn't. So my point is this. There are multiple issues in here, and I think we are making the mistake of now actually confusing one for the other. There is one issue of a player having said something which should be punished under the code of conduct that exists. Do it quickly, fix it in proportion to what the crime is.
Yes.
2, figure out a way of preventing this problem in the future by institutionalizing a mechanism to get the young players to understand how important they are in a public life scenario. And 3, the whole mess that is the administration of BCCI, which needs to be fixed once and for all,
right.
if we don't want this laughing stock to continue.
Right. On that point of the show, Vinay, though, I think perhaps it went through their filters because it's literally routine conversation on their shows. Maybe the benchmarks are different because these were cricketers, and usually there are film stars, and nobody really expects differently from these stars, which unfortunately should also change, but hasn't changed so far. Mr. Srivatsa, I'm sorry I couldn't come to you. You wanted to make a point. So to you before we wrap up the show.
Yeah, well, I just want to make 2 points. One is the fact that, you had 2 issues that were...
One minute, gentlemen. I'll quickly go to both of you.
Any respect to
Mr. Srivatsa first, and then Shishir.
In terms of...
One minute. Mr. Srivatsa first, and then Shishir, I'll come to you. Yes, quickly.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, a few years ago, the board had constituted a committee under Anil Kumble to sensitize the players, so that he can speak to these young cricketers who are at under 19 level and kind of things, who are knocking at the door of Indian team, to tell them what are the good things they should do and what are the things they should avoid, how to conduct themselves in public and interviews, everything. But unfortunately, what happened immediately after that, Anil Kumble was appointed a coach, and that committee has gone into this thing. Nothing has heard of it. See, all those things are in place in the board, but nobody is looking at those things. Only when something like this happens, people suddenly wake up and say, "Oh, what happened to that committee?
Right.
What happened to that Anil Kumble?" Now I think again they might revive it.
Okay, 30 seconds to Mr.
nothing.
Hatangri. I'm sorry, I'm completely out of time, but 30 seconds to you for your point, Mr. Hatangri. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, well, all I want to end this program by saying is that, look, since that program where they drank coffee, these two young players aren't any more popular. They've lost most of their popularity. And that to me has been the biggest punishment that they can endure now and henceforth in their career. Secondly, let's not take these cricketers lightly. You fast-tracked a Me Too sexual harassment issue by appointing an unauthorized body to probe into the matter. They were not authorized to do it. And here you don't even have the rights to look to the best people to take a decision on these two players. I mean, come on, they're going to serve you more than a CEO. At least respect that and take decisions.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much to all of our panelists for joining us on this conversation. I personally thought this was a very important conversation to have because now the cricketing careers of two young stars is at stake. They have made crass, ignorant remarks on a public platform and they must own the responsibility for it. But are they to be made scapegoats between this power tussle that is going on within the BCCI? If the Committee of Administrators cannot do its own job, they were put in place there for clean administration. And if they have to go running to the Supreme Court to decide on a matter like this, then I believe they don't need to be doing this job anymore. They should go back to the Supreme Court and say, we are sorry, we are unable to do what you wanted us to do. We can't continue. We can't even agree on a single thing between the two of us. Please give this job to somebody else. I genuinely think that maybe it's time for the Committee of Administrators to introspect for the sake of cricket in this country and hand over the reins to somebody who is slightly more clear and capable and takes decisions quicker to ensure that you don't start harming the very cricket that you came to rescue. Thank you so much for joining us on this debate.